Hello, welcome back to Mr. Kendrick's online math class. This is lesson 3.4, one-step equations with multiplying and dividing. Go ahead and turn to the next blank page in your math notebook and write this lesson title at the top. Alright, with one-step equations with multiplying and dividing, we are going to do the same thing as we did when we were using addition and subtraction. The only difference is now we are using multiplication and division. So, when we want to solve one-step equations, we're going to use inverse operations to isolate the variable. Okay, so inverse means opposite. So we're going to use the opposite operation. So that'll be multiplication and division for this lesson. And we want to isolate the variable. So that means we want to get the variable on one side of the equation by itself. And again, remember that the variable is the letter that is representing the unknown for us. And then whenever you see multiplication, you are going to do the opposite. So you're going to divide to solve. And whenever you see division, you're going to multiply in order to solve for the unknown variable. Okay, go ahead and pause here. Make sure you get this written down in your notes. Alright, so go ahead and just watch me as I work through solving these equations. So the first one, we're trying to solve for that unknown variable x. And we have 2 times x equals negative 8. So in order for us to isolate the variable, we are going to do the opposite. So we are going to divide both sides by 2. So we're going to divide by 2. So we can divide by 2 here and do the same on the other side. So when we divide by 2, the 2's are going to cancel. So we're going to be left with just x on this side, and x equals negative 8 divided by 2 is going to be negative 4. And we can check our answer by plugging the value for x back into our equation. So that would look like 2 times negative 4 equals 8. And 2 times negative 4 would equal negative 8, because we have one negative in our multiplication problem, so that means our answer is going to be negative. Alright, and then in the second example, we have x divided by 3, or x over 3, equals 5. Okay, so in order for us to undo that division, we need to multiply. We need to do the inverse operation. So we are going to multiply by 3, and we're going to multiply by 3 on the other side, because if we do one operation to one side, we must do the same operation to the other side. So x divided by 3 times 3 will cancel these 3's out, so we will be left with x over here, and then 5 times 3 is 15, so x is equal to 15. And if we plug that back into our equation, we would have 15 divided by 3 equals 5, and 15 divided by 3 is equal to 5, so that is true. Alright, now it's your turn to try a couple examples. Go ahead and pause the video right here. Try these examples on your own and then come back and see how you did. So remember, we're doing the inverse operation, so we're doing the opposite operation of what you see happening to the variable. Alright, for example A, we have 5x equals negative 15. So we have 5 times x equals negative 15, so we need to undo that multiplication by doing the inverse operation, which is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 5. So divided by 5, divided by 5. 5x divided by 5. 5's will cancel out. We'll be left with just x, and then negative 15 divided by 5 will be negative 3. And if we plug that back into our equation, 5 times negative 3 equals negative 15. And 5 times negative 3 is equal to negative 15. So our answer is true. X is equal to negative 3. Alright, example B, we have x divided by 3 equals negative 6. So we're going to do the opposite of division. We're going to multiply both sides by 3 times 3 times 3. On the left side, the variable side, the 3's will cancel out, and we'll be left with x equals negative 6 times 3 would be negative 18. And if we plug that back into our equation, negative 18 divided by 3 is equal to negative 6. So again, a quick review. We are just trying to isolate the variable by doing the inverse operation that is connected to the variable. So if the variable is being multiplied by a number, we are going to divide by that same number. And if it's being divided by a number, we are going to multiply by that same number to undo that operation. Let's look at a couple more examples here. Go ahead and try these two problems, C and D, on your own and come back and see how you did here. Alright, in problem C we have negative 2.1n equals 14.7. So we have negative 2.1 times n, or multiplied by n. So we're going to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division. So we're going to divide by negative 2.1. So if we do it to one side, we must do it to the other. Divided by negative 2.1. And then these two, the negative 2.1 will cancel out. We'll be left with n over here. N equals, and then we have 14.7 divided by negative 2.1. Alright, remember when we are dividing by decimals, we want to divide by a whole number. So this negative 2.1, we're going to need to move it, the decimal, over one spot to get to negative 21. So we'll have negative 21, and then we need to do the same to the dividend. Move it one place to the right, so we'll have negative 21 going in, or 147 divided by 21. So as I work through this division problem, I'm thinking to myself, first, how many times does 21 go into 147? And that's a little bit of a big number, so I'm going to start by saying, how many times does 2 go into 14? And that would be 7 times. So I'm going to try 7. So 7 would go up here. And then if we do the multiplication, negative 21 times 7, we would get 7 here, and then we would get negative 14, and that would be equal to 147. But in order for us to get to 14.7 as a positive, I need to multiply by negative 7. So it's going to be negative 21 times negative 7 would give us 147. And that would be our answer. So after we do the division, we would say that n is equal to negative 7. If we plug that back into our answer, negative 2.1 times negative 7 equals 14.7. And a negative times a negative will give us a positive. So negative 7 times negative 2 would be 14. And negative 7 times 0.1 would be 0.7. So our answer is true. N is equal to negative 7. Alright, and then for the second one over here, for D, we have t divided by 3 equals negative 4. So we're going to do the opposite of division, which is multiplication. So we're going to multiply by 3. Multiply by 3. These 3's will cancel out. We'll be left with t is equal to negative 12. Negative 4 times 3 would be negative 12. And if we put negative 12 divided by 3, we would get negative 4. So t is equal to negative 12. Alright, when we want to solve equations with fractions, we got to do something a little bit different. The fractions with coefficients, we want to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, remember that the reciprocal is when we just flip the numerator and denominator. So, for example, we have 1/2, and the reciprocal of 1/2 would be 2 over 1. Okay, so whenever we're solving equations with fractions, we want to multiply by the reciprocal. So let's take a look at a couple examples here. I'm going to go ahead and go through these two examples. So for the first one, we would have 3/4 times c equals negative 9. So in order for us to undo this multiplication, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So that would be 4 over 3. So we just switch the numerator and denominator. And then we're going to do the same on the other side, times 4 over 3. Okay, so then that would, we would get 4 times 3 would be 12, and 3 times 4 would be 12. So that would leave us with just 1c. So we'd get c on this side. And on the right side, we have negative 9 times 4 over 3. And whenever we're multiplying by a whole number, we need to put that whole number over 1. And then we can multiply. And in this situation, we have some we have some factors we can factor out. So we can divide both these, the negative 9 and 3, we can divide by 3. So if we divide by 3 here, we'll be left with 3. And if we divide by 3 here, we'll be left with 1. So now we have 3 over 1 times 4 over 1. And that would be 3 times 4 would be 12. And 1 times 1 would be 1. And so then we have that negative, so it would be negative 12 over 1. And in this situation, we definitely want to put this back into our equation to see if we're correct. So we have 3/4 times negative 12 over 1, and we're looking to equal negative 9. Okay, so if we do that and we go through the multiplication process, we can do some factoring here. If we divide by 4, 4 divided by 4 would leave us 1 here, and 12 divided by 4 would leave us 3. So we would have 3 times negative 3 would be negative 9, and 1 times 1 would be 1, so we would get negative 9 over 1, which is equal to negative 9. So c is equal to 12 over 1. For the second example, we have 4 equals 1/3 times w. So to undo that multiplication of the fraction, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to rewrite it right here as 4 equals 3 over 1 times 1/3 w. And then these fractions would cancel out, and we need to multiply this side by 3 over 1. When we do that, we want to put the whole number over 1, and then we can just multiply 3 times 4 and 1 times 1. We would get 12 over 1 equals w. Now if we put that back into our fraction, we would have 1/3 times 12 over 1. And if we do that, we can factor out a 3 from these two numbers. So dividing by 3 here would leave us with 1, and dividing 12 by 3 would leave us 4. And then we multiply. 1 times 4 is 4, and 1 times 1 is 1. So that would equal 4. So our answer is true. W is equal to 12, or 12 over 1. Alright, I got a couple examples for you to try. Go ahead and pause the video, and remember that you are multiplying by the reciprocal to get rid of that fraction next to the variable. Alright, here we go. 3/5 times x equals 6. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, 5 over 3. We need to do it to both sides, 5 over 3. These fractions cancel out. We're left with x. And then we have 6 over 1 times 5 over 3. And we got some common factors here. We can divide these by 3. That'll leave us with 1 here and 2 here. And then we would equal 10 over 1, or 10. So x is equal to 10. If we plug that back into our answer to see if it's correct, we have 3/5 times 10 over 1. And we can divide these two numbers by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And 10 divided by 5 is 2. So then we have 3 times 2, which is equal to 6. And 1 times 1, which is equal to 1. So our answer is true. X is equal to 10. Alright, and then the last one, we have 2/9, or 2 divided by 9h equals 1/6. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 9 over 2. And then these would cancel out. You'd be left with h here. We got to multiply the other side by 9 over 2. And we have some common factors between 6 and 9, so we can divide both of those by 3. So if we divide 6 by 3, we'll be left with 2. 9 divided by 3, we'll be left with 3. And then we can multiply 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4. So 3/4. H equals 3/4. And if we put that back into our equation, we have 2 over 9 times 3/4. And here we can do some cross canceling. For both of these, we divide this side by 2. We would be left with 1 and 2. And we can divide the other side by 3. We'll be left with 1 and 3. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. So our answer is true. H is equal to 3/4.